This is the Instant Speed Podcast brought to you by FABDB.net. This is your premier source for deck building tools, collection management, and simulated booster draft and limited play. So get your practice in and don't forget to upgrade your account on FABDB.net to get access to all the cool features and bring your game to the next level. That's FABDB.net. Now, we're going to get to the facts, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we do here on the Instant Speed Podcast before we get to our awesome guest, Kellen Rosenberger, a.k.a. Red Zone Rogue. So what are those facts? Well, we're going to hit you with the best one first, and that's basically the fact that Everfest is the next set coming out. Yes, Everfest is coming out on February 4th, 2022. A little ways away, but I've heard through the grapevine that the spoiler season will begin on January 24th, 2022. So something to look forward to in those cold winter months. Also, speaking of cold winter months, well, the Canadian Nationals have wrapped up, and the winner was Yuki Lee Bender on Lexi. I was in that tournament. I got smoked out of that first day like nobody's business, but I did top 8 the Pro Quest the next day. That is a big feather in my cap. We don't need to talk about that. Yuki Lee Bender wins the Canadian Nationals on Lexi. There was a plethora of other Flesh and Blood Nationals that went on. One of the notable ones that I do want to mention is the fact that the Finnish Nationals, the Nationals in Finland, was won by Michael. We'll just call you Michael. I apologize if I'm doing that incorrectly. Michael Titanen won with Katsu. A lot of Briars that won the tournaments, but Katsu wins the Finnish U.S. Nationals. Something to think about there. How about Arcane Rising, friends? Arcane Rising is now out of print. Oh yes, the FOMO that everyone suffered for Crucible of War, well, that's coming back around with Arcane Rising. So if you have not got a box of Arcane Rising and you want one, get your mitts on them now because they are out of print. But one of the things that we have spoken about, ladies and gentlemen, is that there is a confirmation that Arcanite Skullcap is going to be reprinted in Everfest. Yes, Everfest is getting some reprints, and Arcanite Skullcap is officially the first leak out of the box. How about James White, the creator, the CEO of Flesh and Blood, did appear on the Red Zone Rogue show channel. Red Zone Rogue got to talk to James White. They had an excellent conversation, a wonderful discussion that you guys should check out. Again, that is on Red Zone Rogue's channel. But we got Red Zone Rogue right now on the podcast. So buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, because it is time to talk to Kellen Rosenberger, aka Red Zone Rogue. The Instant Speed Podcast is really enthused to welcome a pillar of the CCG community. He is a caster for Flesh and Blood, someone who I have had the privilege of casting with, actually, and is honestly just produces a plethora of excellent Flesh and Blood content, and most recently surpassed 10,000 subscribers and over 1 million views. So welcome, Red Zone Rogue. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to be on here. Yeah, man, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I do too, honestly. I mean, we spent some time together in Orlando, and part of it is honestly the fact that I was kind of the I don't know what to call like the plug, in like just plug and play into that cast there, because I got the opportunity to go there, and there was a lot of people like Rob and Andy and people that I didn't get a chance to necessarily work with. But when I went in there, and there's yourself and Armada and Tannen and Matt Rogers and such, and I was always so nervous that people that I'll meet in these capacities, I have the inherent ability of regular, kind of being an everyman and being able to get along with most people. That's not what I'm worried about. But the fact that you guys were so damn welcoming, and like the second I met you, you're like, yeah, we're friends now. Like, we're just friends, and now we're gonna just be friends. And that was really cool of you, man. But so I appreciate that, and we can move on past these pleasantries to the nitty gritty of the first being. You are Red Zone Rogue. You are obviously somebody who is well regarded within CCGs, but in this case, very specifically, Flesh and Blood. But we want to know a little bit more about the origin story of Kellen Rosenberger. The up to this point, what got you to where you are? What got you to this 10,000 subs for Flesh and Blood? Let's hear a little bit about the Red Zone Rogue story.
All right. So how deep lore do we want to go here? Do you want to start like childhood days, or do you want to
Okay.
start like at the content creation level here?
So I think I forgot. I think I said this to, I think it was Tannen or someone else, but I mentioned, I'm like, we could sort of skip over the when a mommy and a daddy love each other very much,
Right.
like, and
Right.
and like just kick it straight up to, your first introductions to card games
Okay.
and where
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got to. Some people like to just sort of skim through a lot of it, but a lot of it is the nitty gritty that is quite fascinating for people like myself and others to listen to say, you know what, there it might not be a clear line from A to B and Flesh and Blood, right? So take us through
Yeah.
the winding road.
So I think there is a clear line, but it's a very long line, and it starts very early. I've been basically playing games my entire life. So my from an early age, my dad was really into computers. Even in the early '90s, he worked for like Intel, and so we always had computers. So playing games was always just a thing. Like I played Warcraft Orcs and Humans on DOS.
DOS.
It was one of the first games that I played. I remember typing /war into the DOS prompt to play it. And so I was just been into this kind of just gaming, and I really like fantasy stuff. A lot of it's stemmed from Warcraft, but a lot of other things too. Like The Hobbit was one of my favorite books as a kid, and Magic: The Gathering was introduced to me pretty early on in about 1994, 1995. I do know that I learned how to play in 1995 with the 4th edition Quick Start box set. It's this garish yellow box that has these 2 starter decks like Zach and Kaz, and that's basically the origin. A couple of my really close friends, in particular, one of them, their older brother was really into Magic, and that's kind of how I heard about it. And then my dad was also into model cars and model trains, and we go to the hobby store, every so often. So my actual first cards that I owned was like just random packs from the hobby store, because I'd go there with my brother and my dad, and my dad would be like, okay, you can have one of the packs, but it has to be the cheapest one. So we ended up with a lot of Fallen Empires. If people know about Magic history, we ended up with a lot of Fallen Empires because the packs were like $1.50 or something at the time. And so ever since then, I've just been super into card games, super into all types of card games too. So it wasn't just Magic. Did play a lot of Magic, but we also got into Pokemon when it came out. We got into Yu-Gi-Oh, like actual competitive Yu-Gi-Oh. I've played Legend of the Five Rings, Warlord, Saga of the Storm, just absolutely a ton of games. And every time my brother and I would go to the hobby store, go to the local game store, when we'd see these little starter decks, we'd just pick up the starter decks and just play. And those are some absolutely fantastic times. And I mentioned the competitive stuff, and I did compete in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, and then I also competed in competitive Magic early on in doesn't exist anymore, but in the Super Series and the Junior Super Series. And so I used to do a lot of trading, go to these tournaments. I think the best I ever did as a kid was I got 11th at a 300 person tournament in Portland. I think it was for Onslaught, the Magic set Onslaught. I was one of the only people in our little group that traveled up there to actually prize. So I was pretty proud of that. I was like in middle school or something. And then basically high school and college happened, and interest and focus shifted from card games to like music. Specifically, I was in a no surprise to anyone who's looking at my hair. I was in a rock and metal band in high school.
What was the name?
And then,
That's what everyone wants to know for sure.
Okay, so there's two. There's a metal band name called Phasmatus, and then there was like a joke.
A second, sorry, that's not because it's a bad name. That's a badass name, Phasmatus. Can you just spell that?
I think it was a PH. Let me type.
Oh, you already threw me off. I was like F something. Okay.
I think it's that. I think it's that. So PHASMATIS. I think so. A couple of friends out there, Grant. If I get this wrong, I apologize. It's been a long time. And then we had a very jokey band that a lot of people described to us, like they said, oh, you're kind of like Jane's Addiction, and This was called Knights of the Hemp Table. And it was a very jokey band. So
I mean, when was this? In like the late 90s, early 2000s?
So it would have been. It's not a secret. I'm in my early 30s, so it would have been a little bit like 2000s ish.
Okay.
Yeah, probably mid to like 2006. I don't know. It's time, man. Time.
You say like it's no secret, like you're hiding, like it's a point of shame. But I am past my early 30s. I am now essentially knee deep into the 30s journey, and I'm 35. So be proud, my friend, because it's all
I'm very
good.
close.
Yeah,
I'm very close to that. Yeah, very.
It only
very
gets
close.
better, I promise you. And you never know. There might be like you're in that sort of bracket now where a Phasmatis reunion tour is completely possible. I'm just saying.
And yeah, for those interested out there, I played rhythm guitar. That's what I played. So anyway, yeah, my focus shifted from like card games into what I imagine a lot of young folks. So it was music and then girls for me, and that kind of extended into college. And I kind of picked card games up back in college after I met Robin, who is my current partner. She and I have been together for like 15 years, man, like a long time. And so I picked card games back up after she and I had been like dating for a while. And we did me and some friends, like local friends on campus, and then some friends from high school who ended up going to a different college nearby. So I went to the University of Oregon, but OSU, or Oregon State, is actually still fairly close. And I had a lot of friends who went to Oregon State. And so I'd invite them over to my apartment. And we have what was called the drink and draft, where we would just get drunk and draft whatever the newest Magic set is. I wasn't like super into the sets at the time, so it was like no one really knew about the cards going into it. Everyone was kind of just doing their own thing. But that's kind of how I got back into card games. And then we're gonna skip a little bit because this is long. After graduating college, Robin and I lived in California for about 5 years, and I kept up with Magic. And that's when I started to really get into listening to Magic content and watching more Magic content, because I couldn't play it as much because I was working, and I worked as a baker for a while. So I was able to listen to podcasts. So I listened to a lot of Limited Resources, which is a Magic the Gathering podcast about limited formats. And that basically like transitioned. I kept doing that until we moved back to Oregon here. Between that time, like a little bit before we moved, I started Red Zone Rogue just kind of as like a little hobby thing. It's just something that I wanted to do. My major in college is actually in film. So I actually have a degree in film, mostly towards film history rather than production. But I find film and cinema very fascinating and very interesting, and it's just kind of like a hobby passion of mine kind of thing. And I wanted to use that a little bit more. And so making Red Zone Rogue was one of the things I did to do that. I made the channel very vague because I didn't want to focus specifically on any one card game. So I didn't want to be like, MTG Central or, Pokemon right. Town or whatever. I wanted to make it very broad so I can cover whatever I wanted, because that was the idea. I just want to talk about things that I'm like really into and really passionate about. And so that's kind of like the general origin story. I can get into like Flesh and Blood and that kind of stuff if you'd like to, but that's kind of like the general.
Well, I mean, and like that was quite a journey, if I may say so. I mean, we learned a lot of things that I didn't know, for example, that you were in not just one, but two bands, first of all.
Yeah.
Rhythm guitar, got to know those like 5 chords. Otherwise, and the power chords for sure. I'm sure that was possible. That's part of it.
Power chords. I mean, like, man, if you know power chords, you can play almost any Nirvana song, any like Ramones song. Like there's a lot of bands. Like if you just can do power chords, like you can do a ton of just fun covers.
Right.
Yeah.
You're basically headlining the dance, is what's happening, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and then that led you to Flesh and Blood, where you currently are. And I mean, I would imagine that's where most of your attention is being dumped into right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's like the way I like to think about it is like currently, and I don't see this changing anytime soon. Flesh and Blood is like my main game. It's my favorite game. I discovered Flesh and Blood through some content creator friends who don't really do anything anymore, called TCG Scrubs, and they like did a video on it like not early 2020, late 2019, right after Welcome to Wraith Alpha came out, and I saw the video and I was like, this looks awesome. And they were like, hey, reach out to the company. They're really cool with content creators. And I was like, done, I'm going to do it. And so I immediately, it was like December 2019 or something, reached out to Legend Story Studios, and they gave me like an email address to reach out to, TCG Scrubs gave me an email address to for LSS to reach out to. And oddly enough, the content creator, the community manager at the time, is Ian Kenderdine, who's someone who's been on my channel more than a few times now. He's become a pretty good friend. He basically, and I'm very, very thankful for this, and I attribute a lot of my getting into Flesh and Blood this early to him. Saw something in my tiny little channel, and he sent me a booster box of Alpha, 2 playmats, and all of the welcome decks. It took a little while to get there to get here because shipping from New Zealand and stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's how I kind of got into the game, and I immediately got hooked. Like, I instantly loved the game. I wanted to try it because of the art and the flavor and just kind of the general feel. But after like playing it, and I played it with my partner Robin, like it was great. And the fact that she's not a card game player. She likes board games and
right.
like Animal Crossing. Like she likes games, but she's not really a competitive card game player. But she liked it, and that was a huge selling point for me. I'm like, okay, so she likes it, or didn't hate it at least. Like that was really big.
There's always a fascination in terms of the different levels of appeal that people have to any particular game, and specifically to Flesh and Blood. The more people I reach out to and talk about it and get their vibe of the game, there's no consensus in terms of what it is that they like about it the most. Some people are saying, well, the resource system, which is in general, I think the resource system in terms of like cost of cards and paying to play them, etc., is one of the most difficult things in any game to balance. I don't think there has been any game that has really knocked it out of the park in terms of how to do it, but I think Flesh and Blood comes very close in terms of balancing that. Momentum in the game, some people really like the feeling of momentum, the identity and the character identity, in terms of the game mechanics, the actual back and forth of it. Some people are just into the art and dig even deeper into the lore. So this game is it's sort of just. It kind of has, its tentacles all over the place and tickling everyone's fancy about different kind of what they're appreciative of it. And like you mentioned, your partner Robin, who's not necessarily into card games, it's not the first time I hear that where people are into this game despite this not necessarily being their genre of choice.
Yeah, we can talk about that at length later, because I have a lot to say about that after interacting a lot with my community. But I do want to say, like, the fact that when I showed it to Robin, I was like, hey, this company sent me this game. I want you to, learn to play it with me so I can kind of like do videos on it. And she's like, okay, let me see. And then she saw Dorinthia, and she's like, okay, there's a cool female character. I'll play with you. Like, that was a big, selling point for her. Like, they had a cool female character that she could play. And I think that speaks a lot for the hero system that Flesh and Blood has, where people can find a character that they like or can relate to, or just, one that they really, really love for whatever reason. And even that's what I think Flesh and Blood will excel, not just as a competitive game, but as a game that a lot of different folks can enjoy. Like you mentioned, if whether they like it for the art or the characters or whatever. So I think I think that's very important. By the way, she played Dorinthia, I played Katsu, and she beat me the first game. So we'll just say that.
The first time I ever played with my girlfriend, it was we both got starter decks. I played Prism, she played Levia. It did not go well for me. That was just I was just like, oh, and again, silly me. I get them. I'm like, I'll be the ugly kind of monster lady, and you could be the really cool. She's like, no, I want to be the ugly monster lady. I'm like, you do you. I'm like, I don't have no idea what any of these cards do. Anyways, needless to say, she is enamored with Smash with Big Tree, and mainly because she likes the fact that the name of the card is basically what the card is doing. And she's like, it's just a big smash in your face. I'm like, you're not wrong. It's 7 damage to my mouth. I'm not going to argue with you.
I have a little story about Smash with Big Tree, because I mentioned that Ian Kenderdine used to work at Legend Story Studios. He doesn't anymore, but he still has a lot of connections to Legend Story Studios. He's friends with James White. But he's a regular guest on my channel, and at one point he told me a story about Smash with Big Tree, because that card was made while he was working there, and it was it? Did he come up with the name? He either came up with the name for it, or he convinced them to keep the name because it was a playtest name. One of those two things happened. But the reason that card is called Smash with Big Tree is because of Ian, because he loves it. So he loved the name so much.
I love that little bit of lore behind it, because that card essentially, I had to get play sets of foils for her, because it was basically, that was it. It's just like, no, I don't care if the card is good or bad. And I remember, because I won a draft tournament with Levia, and it was because I had a bunch of Smash with Big Trees and they just couldn't block it out. And I remember texting saying, I won. She's like, hey! I'm like, with Smash with Big Tree, and then it was like 900 emojis. So I was like, there you go. Of like, I did it. But yeah, it's like fascinating. Again, you're so entwined with the community for Flesh and Blood, and your channel has grown so nicely, and it has been such a staple amongst the community. But as a content creator with a game like Flesh and Blood, everything else out there within this genre typically has a digital counterpart to it. And I know that there are crutches out there, stuff like TTS, Tabletop Simulator, that can, give you some kind of outlet for a digital, medium for it. But other than
apologize.
that,
apologize for the barking dog.
No, she heard Smash with Big Tree, and they're a fan as well. I totally get it. Don't worry about it. What's the dog's name, out of curiosity?
Her name is Potato. She's barking. Yeah, she's a tiny little, like a Chihuahua Papillon mix. Potato. Hey, come here.
If she is there, I would love to have her on the show. Yeah, bring her on. I am such a big fan of dogs, and it's stuff like this that just overjoys me, because I cannot have one. So I basically have adopted oh my goodness. Okay, for all of those who are listening through something like Spotify or whatnot, you're essentially missing, this is your opportunity to go ahead and check this out on the 983 Media channel, because there is a dog, and it's Red Zone Rogue's dog, Potato. And
yep, she's a Chihuahua Papillon. She's a rescue. We don't exactly know how old she is. She's I guess she was 2 when we got her, so she's probably close to 7-ish or so. I actually worked in the pet industry for like 7 years as a manager. It was my previous job before going full time with Red Zone Rogue. So I know quite a bit about dogs, and I was very into the nitty gritty of the pet industry. So she is a good dog.
Yeah, I was gonna say, she is just like chilling out there. I love it. You're just got her all. She just wanted to be on the show, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, she's very, very protective. So I'm pretty sure I have a UPS package outside, and the fact that someone came up to the door and knocked on it once, she's like,
danger.
No.
Yeah, get out of her territory. I totally dig it. So I mean, part of the growing community, and the fact that there's no digital outlet for you to kind of branch out there. It's not like you can stream the game, where a lot of content creators kind of use to just jumpstart their own content to be available to the viewership out there. How have you accommodated for that in terms of building and cultivating a following without something as straightforward as a digital client for this game?
Yeah, it's actually pretty tricky, especially in like where we are now with the world, with it being difficult to get together in person. It's it's one of those situations where you basically have to, or at least I had to find different types of content that could be repeatedly created but still keep them interesting. And so, I thought of, there's the standard like box opening stuff, but like you can't just, I mean, you could try, but it's very difficult to be just like a box opening channel because there's so many people who do that, and it's just kind of like some of the easiest kind of content you can do. So I really, racked my brain on the types of content that I could do. So I ended up settling with what I call like discussion videos. So just kind of like, I think of a good topic and that I want to discuss with the community, something that I think is important or I think that warrants discussion. Whether I have a point to make or whether I just want to bring something up with the community. There's also like deck techs. And for my deck techs, personally, I always love doing them with physical cards because I like actually making the decks and I play with the decks. And like you said, there's no digital version. So I literally bake the decks and I play with them. And then the other one is gameplay. And gameplay is very, very tricky. These days, it's mostly just webcam games. I'm not a huge fan of tabletop simulator. Apologies. I attribute that to being what I call mostly an old man in that regards. I just want to play with the actual cards, man. I just want to play with the actual cards.
Yeah, they don't sponsor the show, so I don't care. You could trash them all you want. Screw them, unless they're sponsoring us. In which case, you are out of your league, sir. But no.
But I definitely recognize the value that Tabletop Simulator has for getting people into the game and getting people to try the game without having to purchase cards and that kind of stuff. I think that's fantastic. But for me personally, I'd rather just play with the cards. And so because of that, all of the gameplay that I do on my channel is like via webcam. I would love to do in-person stuff, but it's just difficult these days for a myriad of reasons. And you just kind of have to work around it. You have to come up with more ideas than just kind of like, turning on Hearthstone or whatever and then playing whatever the newest, patch is.
Yeah, it seems like it's like an easy kind of cushion, right? When you have that just out there. I'm not saying this to, disparage or otherwise kind of diminish the content that other people make, but it's consider it as just a completely different lane or an alternate route that you can take to create content where you could legitimately, like, sometimes I'll be streaming, like I stream Gwent pretty much 5 days to 6 days a week. And oftentimes if I'm just, if I have no inspiration for what a video can be, oftentimes I'll just take my stream, find 4 or 5, intriguing games that I played, smash them together, slap a bookend intro and outro on the video, and just publish it. And with Flesh and Blood, it's not that simple because you need a setup and your deck techs and whatnot. It's not a matter of just going out there, hitting a button, and then an algorithm will pair you with an opponent. I wish it were that simple, but that's why there's a more power to you for how you're doing this, and the grind of it must be immense. Like the mental grind of not just producing, but producing content with these kinds of restrictions and pitfalls.
Yeah, because like even for just a gameplay video, I still have to like schedule someone to be on the channel and be like, hey, do you want to do a gameplay video with me? What time works for you? I mentioned Ian a couple times. He's from New Zealand, so like there's a big time difference. Like just even gameplay videos becomes difficult. And for me personally on Red Zone Rogue, I do a video every other day. I try to do, I want to say like 90-ish% Flesh and Blood content. And I like to throw in one non-Flesh and Blood video every week or two, just to kind of keep things fresh. And I love discovering new games and checking out indie games that I think are worth talking about or highlighting. And so I try to basically what I do now is I have like literally it's a notepad document of just ideas. I'm just like, okay, these can be good ideas to talk about. And I just have like just a ton of ideas. And I'm like, okay, so I can't do all the deck techs at once because then it's just smarter to spread them out, right? So it's like, if I want to do deck techs, I'll probably spread them out over the course of a month or so. So I can have like, if I do a video every other day, I can have like a deck tech, I can have like a box opening, I can have a gameplay, and then I can have like a discussion video about whatever the topic is. And if some breaking news happens, I can push some stuff back, and I can cover like the breaking news. And so that basically that's how I've gotten it. It can be tricky. Fortunately, I haven't run out of ideas yet, but yeah, I mean that's the real trick of it. The best part about it is that it's a trading card game, or at least the games that I cover are trading card games, and they release sets every couple months. So as long as I can keep it going for a couple months, right, a new set will come out, and then I'm like, oh, this is fresh stuff to talk about, new cards, new meta. We can just get into that, and hopefully that lasts until the next set. But for Flesh and Blood, it was tricky for a while because things got delayed pretty harshly between Crucible of War and Monarch, and so that was like, it was like a drought, man. Like that was tough. I think LSS is on pace to just have regular releases now, but for a while there, it was a little tricky.
Yeah, it seems like again, like you're just waiting for that fuel tanker to show up and just kind of give you a little bit more gas while you're just going through, because it's definitely difficult. And for those out there who are kind of, well, how hard could it be? You just slap on your camera and you talk about cards for 15 minutes and then you publish it. It's difficult. It is really tough because you have to not only impress other people, whether their expectations are high or low, but there's expectations on yourself to actually, the amount of, like you said, you jot down ideas, and how many of them are like, well, this is just dumb, and you just don't even go through it, or it's just like, this is so low quality or low effort. And I will say this, I have, spoken with people who sponsor this podcast and whatnot, and or potential sponsors. And one of the things that they have always told me is, we do not want to be associated with box opening videos. They're like, yeah. There's nothing to them. There's no effort. It's not that they're not intriguing, because I sometimes catch myself watching Star Wars CCG box openings.
Yo, old school.
Oh, big time old school. I'm like, this seems fun, but it's not like what you do is different. And one of the things I wanted to discuss before we dig in too deep is the fact that you had James White on your podcast or on your channel very recently. And for those who do not know, James White is the CEO, the creator of Flesh and Blood. So you have the godfather of it all on your podcast. And, maybe like before, I don't want to spoil anything that was on the podcast or on the interview, because that was a fantastic thing. And I implore everybody to go to Red Zone Rogue's YouTube channel and listen to the entire thing. The entire thing was awesome. I put it on while I started cooking, and before I was finished eating and did the dishes, I was just like, wow, it's done, and this is awesome. And that's why this was so well timed to have you on, because it seems to me like James White, first of all, the dude swears on your show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, I trust you. Like, literally, that was one of the few things where no matter what happens, as soon as somebody drops like an F-bomb or an S-bomb, I'm like, yeah, I could trust this guy.
I'll be honest. Like, so for Red Zone Rogue, just in general, when I first started out, I kind of just let it all fly, and I swore a lot. If you know me in real life, I kind of swear like a pirate, just kind of sprinkle it in, not like angry, like just like kind of just, it's just peppered in to how I talk a lot. And for the channel, I do what I would call like a radio personality, radio voice, right? So I don't swear, and I try to keep it clean, because I know that there's a lot of folks out there who have children and all this kind of stuff. Even though the games that I cover are like adult games, I still want to be respectful of that kind of stuff. But if James is going to drop it, I'm like, you know what? Let's do it, man. Let's
all
do it.
Together now. Yeah.
It's funny because like after talking to him, like we spoke afterwards for about like 40 minutes or so, just about a bunch of random stuff. And that's when I was like actually like using my normal speech patterns. And so I was just like, kind of swearing up a storm. So it was almost liberating afterwards,
I always tell people that when the broadcast light goes on, so to speak, I have this, I'm not amazing at sports. I can't like sing particularly well. I have no athletic prowess, but one skill that I have been blessed with is that I can shut it off and turn it back on where necessary. If I have to go into production mode. If I have to go into broadcast mode, I can do it. And it's amazing because I like within me subconsciously, I understand the consequences of the type of broadcast that I'm on, because if I'm streaming, you know what, it'll come in, it'll sort of slip and slide now and then, you know, the language gets colorful. But if it's on an official paid broadcast gig, like, you know, if it was the Flesh and Blood, the Callings, or the Nats, or if it's a Gwen Open or a Masters series or something like that, that's when it kind of just should shut off. And I'm like, all right, I can be professional. This is a skill that I cherish so much because it's kept me, you know, gainfully employed for several years. So to see him let loose like that, that was awesome. But no, honestly, that interview was so telling in terms of James's his personality and the way that he appreciates the community. That really shone through a lot.
Yeah, that was just showcasing James as a person was kind of like the intent of that interview, right? Because I easily could have gone deep into like, you know, why are there so many room blades? Why all this kind of stuff? But that wasn't the intent. The intent of the interview was to be like, you know, I want to get to know James like as a person and as someone who's passionate about card games, because I see him as like a kindred spirit, right? This person who grew up with these card games and just kind of made it into, you know, made it into a career, like, you know, made his life's dream, life goal into a career. And I just kind of wanted to share that, you know, aspect of it. And the fact that, yeah, like you said, like he's so appreciative of the community and he recognizes these things. And I mean, he doesn't just recognize them, but, you know, realizes how important they are. You know, everything from community to the local game stores to content creators to, you know, pro players is fascinating to me. And it's also, I think, one of the main reasons why Legend Story Studios is as successful as it is because it's, you know, being spearheaded by this guy who, you know, he's been there, like he's been in the trenches. He knows how it is, like it really is, right?
You know, he dug into the fact that he was on like the distribution side, and he understands a lot of, you know, that element to it. Then he sort of transitions over to the publication side and the creator side, which is a whole different ballgame. Again, I don't want to take away from your video because your video is exceptional. And I, again, will tell everybody who's listening to this, do yourself a favor, go take a look at that video. It is well worth the wonderful discussion that Red Zone Rogue has with James White. But if there's one thing that you can pull out of that interview that you had with him, obviously he did drop you know, a little bit of a leak here and there, a little bit of a preview, which I won't spoil here. But what did you pull out of that interview about James White that, you know, you may not necessarily have known, or you did know, but was hammered home for you?
It's a interesting question. Honestly, when James shared it's not really a story, but just kind of like something that would happen often of him just, you know, after, you know, going to the card store, selling some cards, buying like a 6-pack of beers,
then
going to like
yes,
the arcade, just cracking six. Like, man, like that is so
okay.
Not only nostalgic, but man, I just love that.
That
like,
was
it's so
the highlight for me. I don't mean to just hijack that again, but when I was listening to it, I literally, I was doing the dishes when I heard that part. I shut the water because I was like, I don't want this to be interrupted in any way. That story, I'm not going to ruin it, but the story of like the standard weekend or the standard Friday night for James of selling cards to buy a 12-pack. That's so good. I love that.
So like that is what really stands out to me because, you know, it how do I put this? It shows James as more than just like the CEO of this company and, you know, the creator of the game, right? It's a very human thing to do. And it shows that he's like, you know, I don't want to say like just one of us, but, you know, kind of like that vibe, you know, like it's very relatable.
Right.
And I love that.
And that sort of gives you a little bit more trust into James in terms of the direction of the company, that he was there, you know, buying packs, trading cards, you know, upgrading decks, not to mention the fact that he was a top level competitor for games that he played. And
yeah, he said he played in Magic Worlds a couple times representing New Zealand. I know from talking with both my friend Ian and James in the interview that he's been known for breaking games before. Like he's gotten cards banned because he, is really good at analyzing metas and breaking them. So the dude knows stuff. He knows stuff about card games, man.
Yeah, the game's in good hands is what I definitely took out of that entire conversation, was the fact that you're not. It's not somebody who's designing a game because it's their job to design a game. They designed a game because it was their passion, and this was an idea that they had, and everything that came out of it was based on years of experience, years of joy and passion for that genre and that media. And suddenly you have Flesh and Blood, and he's still so into it and appreciative of the reception of it. Again, that interview was exceptional. Everybody go check that interview out. Last thing before we get to the Go Again segment, which I hope you'll stick around for, is the fact that this is the second instance now of an out of print announcement. The initial one was Crucible of War, which kind of sparked this mass collection, this hoarding of the product. Now Arcane Rising has been announced, and Arcane Rising, even before it was announced that it was going out of print, was a pretty heavy-hitting set in terms of EV. You have cards like, obviously, Arcanite Skullcap is in there. You have Command and Conquer, Art of War. There's some big heavy hitters in there. Is this, how unlimited really is unlimited when it can just go out of print? What are your sort of thoughts and musings in terms of this situation where unlimited is really kind of this term to mean the second wave, not the first print?
Yeah, I think the name Unlimited may be a little bit of a misnomer, to be completely honest. I think if they had called it something like Second Edition, it wouldn't have been as surprising to some people. It wasn't surprising to me at all, because I knew that these things would eventually go out of print. It's stuff that I've talked about in my channel at length, and I wanted, to make it clear to my audience that, hey, I know that these are going to go out of print. You should know that these are going to go out of print too, because they're not going to be in print forever. And that's due to many different things. One thing, the most important one, is that in a previous interview, James literally said that all the sets will eventually go out of print. It's just something that's going to happen. It's also just kind of like a logistic nightmare to, 3 years from now to have like 20 something sets in print. And, if a local game store has to order like a batch of it, like who's going to want to buy like, like the, I don't know, throw a Monarch. Like, who's going to want to buy Monarch in like 4 or 5 years outside of like drafting or something like that? So it's something that I very aware of, and it was like, hey, people, you should know these things are going to go out of print. It's just going to happen. And I encourage my viewers, like, if they like the sets, like regardless of investing and all that stuff, if you like the sets, like if you like Arcane Rising, if you like Welcome to Wraith, specifically Welcome to Wraith right now, because it's currently still in print. If you like Welcome to Wraith and you want to draft it in the future, you want to have a box to do drafts with friends or play sealed, you should probably buy them soon, because it will go out of print. And currently the boxes are fairly cheap. With all things considered, they're like $60, $70 depending on where you get them. And so, it's I think a lot of that could have been avoided, like a lot of the confusion, if it was just called like Second Edition, right? Because like when you hear the word unlimited, you're like, oh, unlimited, it's forever. No, it's not. It's not actually forever. It's not actually forever. I'm not sure why they chose unlimited as the name. Possibly because of Magic's history, because if you know the history of Magic the Gathering, there was Alpha Beta, and then the set that came after Alpha Beta was Unlimited, right? Mm-hmm. And they called the first print of Welcome to Wraith Alpha. So it feels like they're following a little bit of Magic's naming conventions, but yeah, that's the only reason I could think of it, to be honest.
I mean, it's putting a title to it like Alpha gives it a little bit of extra luster for all those who are, be it collectors. It's at least a way to drive sales to a degree. And the economy of this game is something that a lot of people have discussions over. And for my own experience here, for example, for Crucible of War, when that went out of print, quote unquote out of print, I had to basically go through a myriad of different connections that I had to secure myself a case. I only wanted a box, but a case was offered to me, so I got a case, and I ended up contacting some friends and said, I have a case. Do you guys want a box at cost of what I paid for it per box? And basically that's what we did. When Arcane Rising was basically within a minute or so, and part of this is the fact that I follow so many different Flesh and Blood people on Twitter, that the second that announcement was made, I think it was like either you or someone else posted about it, and I immediately went to a website of a LGS that I buy from, and they had Arcane Rising not only in stock but on sale. So I bought a case for a really good price, and I went through and I rushed and I bought the case, and within 5 minutes of that transaction completing, they marked it out of stock, and then they relisted it at essentially double the price. And I was like,
yeah, that's
kind of it is what it is. I'm glad that I got it done. But it was like something like this, when an out of print, the effect it has on the economy it's kind of a little bit, and this is not to LSS's fault by any means, because they have to make an announcement that something's going out of print. But it kind of creates this massive shockwave amidst the economy.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of like FOMO when things go out of print. It's very interesting too. I'm not really a finance guy. I don't talk about investment or finance on my channel like at all. I don't think I've literally made a single video about it. But like, I know Crucible of War, for example, was sitting on shelves just not selling for so long. And the second they're like, this is out of print, people are like, what? It's out of print? I need it now. I need it now. Gimme. And it's like, I don't know, it's just a really, really interesting thing.
Yeah, it's a whole different aspect of card gaming that I, like you, are not. I'm just not that, I don't say inclined to dig into it too deep. But some people, that is just as important as the gameplay, is like how these cards can maintain value or appreciate in value more than anything. And the fact that something going out of print just should skyrocket the demand, but then you get something like reprints, and that was one of the most recent spoilers from your video, was that a very prominent card, which I won't say here because I want them to go see your video, is getting a reprint. And that it's like this tug of war. It's like this roller coaster ride of, okay, the value goes up, but then the value goes down, but then the value is going to go. And anyway, like the economy of this game is something that it's like, at a certain pace, I'm like, I have a box in the back, but the advice that you gave me right now is really good, which is, if you like Wrath.
Wraith. That's how James says it. James says it Wraith, so I go with whatever he says.
It's Wraith. If you like Welcome to Wraith, and get it while it's available, because like you said, nothing lasts forever. Go get a box of it, and even if you don't need it now, like you said, Wraith is a great set to draft. It is a great set to draft.
And I'll be like super like transparent about like what I have. So I can see it's just sitting on my table over here. For me as a content creator, I like having some backlog of boxes so I can like do things with them for the channel, right? So if I ever want to do like a sealed with a friend or another like content creator, I'll have a box just available. So I have at least 4 of every box just sitting on here. I have a couple extra Arcane Rising because it's my favorite set, and also I got one from Orlando using my prize tickets because it was my favorite set. And then I have extra Crucible of War because when it went out of print, I immediately bought a box, or bought a case rather, and the boxes were only like 100 something each. And then someone in the community, and I'll give him a shout out because he's really, really cool. He's another content creator called Intrinsic Gaming. He also runs a store. He was like, hey, do any content creators need product to do videos on? And I'm like, do you have crew and maybe like a case of Aria? And he's like, yeah, I'll sell it to you at MAP. And I'm like, sweet. Like, sweet. I'll just have it for like
in case
MAP pricing. But it's just like something that I like to have, just in case I want to make a video or something. And that's why I encourage people to not for investment purposes, because like I said, I don't have insight on this, but if you like it, then you should get some, because it's ephemeral, right? It's
Yeah.
not going to be here forever.
Yeah, if it just doesn't go out of print, I mean, eventually it'll evaporate in some way, shape, or form, or disintegrate. Who knows, man? It'll degrade. Get it now. Yeah, we're not getting paid to say this, but in reality, the fact is that for all those who are saying, I'm not paying that price for a box of Arcane, I should have bought it yesterday when it was like, on normal price. Well, that's going to happen to Monarch. It's going to happen to Wraith. It's going to happen to Arya eventually, probably, maybe. But at the moment now's the time to get yourself a box of Wraith and just have it in the back, in the back burner when necessary.
There's like two other things. You mentioned reprints, and LSS has been very clear about their willingness to reprint any card. So that's just a thing that they could do anytime. Just reprint cards wherever they want. So like even though these cards are out of print, like so cards for Crucible of War, Command and Conquer from Arcane Rising, like there's a very, very good chance we'll just see them in the future at some point. There might even be a really good chance, and I think this is something that James mentioned in a previous interview, not in the one that I had, but the idea of having like a core set where it's just all reprints of stuff that just needs to be reprinted, because Flesh and Blood is a game that doesn't rotate, right? And so in like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, or whatever, when E-Strike and Light and Strike and Command and Conquer haven't been printed for like over 2 years, they're going to need reprints, and they can just jam it all into like a core set and call it like World of Wraith Volume 1 or something like that, and just have like a nice like reprint set. So that's something that could happen, and I know that James has teased as a possibility in the future.
A box that has like Command and Conquer's, E-Strikes, Tunics.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Art of War.
How awesome would that be to like draft too? Like a high powered, like super high juiced set. Oh, that sounds awesome. That sounds so cool.
I could already see the price of a case on like the secondary market when it gets sold out in the first. Oh my God. All right. That's a whole other episode. For now, we still got the Go Again segment coming around. I hope you'll stick around with me, Red Zone Rogue.
Oh yeah, of course.
Awesome, man. All right, so right after the break, we'll be back with Go Again. Again, that is this podcast is brought to you by FABDB.net. You can use the FABDB, all the awesome deck building tools. Upgrade your account to a premium account and really, honestly, take your game to the next level with FABDB.net. We'll be right back with Go Again. Ladies and gentlemen, the national season has essentially wrapped up, but that doesn't mean that the work is done, because there's skirmish season coming up. We're going to have some more callings rolling around. The competitive season never really ends if you mean business. And if you want to bring your game up to the next level, FabDB.net has all the resources and tools you need, not just to manage your collection, friends, but to get all that practice that you need. Because, hey, it's not just about Classic Constructed anymore. Limited is where winners are made. I am talking from experience. Trust me on this. I really regret not being better at draft, at sealed, and one way that you can practice is by going to FabDB.net, upgrading your account to the premium version, and practicing with simulated booster drafts and simulated sealed. I promise you, you will not regret it. Go to FabDB.net. It is your premier source for deck building and collection tools. All right, it is time to go wide with Kellen Rosenberger, aka Red Zone Rogue, as we go again on a series of rapid fire questions. Now, these questions are not necessarily always rapid fire, RZR. So what we're gonna do is just let you go in as deep into the weeds as you want. Are you ready for Go Again?
I am ready. The weeds are tall and thick, and I'm ready to go diving in.
Okay, I love it. All right. Well, with my first action, we will say, what is your dream match to cast, both players and heroes?
Ooh. So players is a really tricky one, to be honest. Heroes, less tricky. I would love to cast an Azalea in a top 8. Like, I don't really care as much who Azalea is playing against. It would be awesome for Azalea to be playing against whatever the meta class is, and then Azalea to win, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be super honest. Because Azalea has a lot of like ties to me and Red Zone Rogue. Azalea, like, I've got a spoiler card for every single Flesh and Blood set except for the set that they didn't do it. Welcome to Wraith. And My very first one was an Azalea specialization, and since then, almost all my cards have been Ranger cards, except for Monarch, which didn't have a Ranger in it. So, I want to see Azalea be good. So yes, Azalea for players. I've never cast like some of the high level New Zealand players like Cale McCreath or even Matt Rogers. So I would say like one of those guys up there. Yeah, for sure.
All right, this one comes from Sarah NSMTG on Twitter. And Sarah asks, what is your absolute favorite card? Now, I'm going to take a flyer on this and say it's probably a Ranger card.
Yeah, it's either my first spoiler card ever, which is Knock the Death Whistle, which is one of Azalea's specializations, because for a couple of reasons. One, it was the first time any company had ever given me a spoiler card ever, and it was very. It was like a landmark moment for me as a content creator, where this company trusts me enough to preview one of the things that they've created. And it was like not just like a trust building exercise, but I felt very honored. And so that card has a special place in my heart. The other one is the most recent card I previewed, Seek and Destroy, for a couple of reasons, actually. So first of all, James asked me what kind of card I would like. Like, seriously, I'll just straight up. He's like, what's your favorite hero? Or what's your favorite class? I was like, Ranger. And he's like, gotcha. And so he gave me Seek and Destroy. And what I love so much about this is, one, it's an Azalea. There's a card made specifically for Azalea. And two, it's a reference to a metal song, Seek and Destroy, by Metallica. And I asked James if this was like the intent. He's like, yeah, it was. In fact, he told me that there were other cards in the set that had, in Tales of Aria, that had metal references as well, but the names had to change due to art, because the art came back and it was different than what they expected, so they had to change the names. So I just love that. I love that. It was like the absolute perfect card.
What if
Ranger card, Azalea card, metal.
What if Sleep Dart was actually Enter Sandman or something like that?
Oh yeah. I don't have any insight on that, but that would be awesome.
That would be awesome. That is something that we have to ask James. Just maybe he's just like a Metallica fan in general.
I know they really love to do references on cards. So like they do a lot of like wrestling references, but I would not be surprised if they put just a ton of just references in. So I wouldn't be surprised.
All right. So what is one card that you would just never want to see reprinted? You know that, LSS says they are not afraid to reprint any card, but what is one that you just do not want to see reprinted? Honestly,
Drone of Brutality is like, I don't know how many people out there have actually played against Drone of Brutality because it got banned kind of early on, but man, it is a slog, especially in limited. Oh, it is gross. So I just say Drone of Brutality because it's not fun for me to play against, at least.
I won a Welcome to Wrath sealed event because I had 2 Drone of Brutalities. Ugh. And so shout out to Manta Gaming in Ontario, just north of Toronto, because it was the best thing ever. I won my cold foil Shiver with a double Drone of Brutality that went down to the wire, and I was just like, this card is dumb. This card is so dumb.
It's so dumb. It's just, if you end up with like 3 or 4 of them, come on, like how's your opponent gonna win when you fatigue out? Like,
yeah, you just block, get them back. Block, get them back.
Yeah, block, weapon, block, or you can play one. Like, it's just, ugh.
That's not a bad answer, especially, I mean, it's been banned already. Like, they're never going to bring that back, I would imagine. So
I actually noticed in the most recent printing of Welcome to Wraith, there were no Drone of Brutalities. They actually got rid of them after it got banned. So I found that to be very interesting.
Smart move. Yeah. I will cherish my foil ones. All right. This one is from Fresh and Buds on Twitter, asking, what is your most memorable Flesh and Blood moment so far?
That is a very hard question to answer, to be honest. There's a couple. Like I mentioned, there's when LSS sent me my first preview card. That meant so much in terms of like the amount of faith that they're giving me and or that they're putting in me. There's also when Channel Fireball asked me to be part of their content creation team. Like they approached me like kind of out of nowhere. And that's another part where I was like very, very honored. And it's because of my my work with Flesh and Blood, and that of course then went into doing coverage and casting, and led into this whole other part of my career now. So those really stand out to me. Those two like watershed moments. So I guess I'm gonna go with those. Yeah.
What is your most prized Flesh and Blood possession? Because you got some pretty cool stuff there. I've seen on various videos, etc. You got a nice collection, but what is your most prized piece?
So I'll do this two different ways. My most expensive thing is I have a very, very, very nice cold foil tunic that I opened for my second booster box ever from Flesh and Blood, and I still have it. And that's going to be like my most valuable piece. I also have a cold foil adult visceri that LSS sent to me for Christmas last year. Man, these years are dragging on. But they sent me a cold foil visceri, which was one of my favorite heroes at the time. But I think my actual favorite thing is, I'm going to pull it on here because I just have it here because I was using it recently. This is the playmat that James sent to me for hitting the 10K subs.
Oh, wow.
The Legend Story Studios, man. As far as I know, no one else owns one of these outside of Legend Story Studios. So this is probably my most cherished.
I'll give you $50 for it.
No. I mean, I'll be like super honest. If someone even offered me like 5,000, I don't think I'd do it. This is like, it means more to me than money, if that makes any sense.
No, then that's perfectly fine. And I would cherish that as well. I remember the first ever playmat that I ever won. Like I won a tournament and I got a playmat for Flesh and Blood. And somebody was like, I'll give you $100 for it. And I was like, it's a playmat. It's like worth nothing to me. But the fact that I won it is worth more than, it's like, for instance, it's like, remember, winning in RTN and getting the full art tunic. Somebody asked me whether I would keep it or sell it. And I said, well, you know what? I think I wouldn't mind selling it. I don't think that's a big deal, but I know that they can't take away the fact that I won it. But at the same time, the fact that the value is that I won it, like I want to keep it. But if I saw somebody have it and then I asked them, oh, did you win that? And they said no, but I'd be like, it kind of loses a little bit of its luster,
That's a little more interesting. If I had won that other than have it given to me, I don't know if my opinion would change, but I'd have to think about it more. Yeah. I'd have to think about it more. Yeah.
Well, hang on to that thing. That is a beautiful, beautiful playmat. That is a wonderful piece. Again, another reason why you guys should check out this video on YouTube, because we've seen a dog already and we've seen that wicked ass playmat. All right. This one is from Gerard Barber on Twitter asking, if you could design one card to make Azalea more competitive, what would it be?
I love that this is a Azalea focused question.
People know you. I don't think there's a secret, right?
Okay, so this is something that actually came up at the US Nats in the top 8. We saw Lexi draw. No, it's not Azalea, but Ranger still. And I think this shows an inherent weakness in the class. We saw Lexi play 3 of a kind with a commanding lead, an absolute commanding lead. Opponent was basically dead on board, but not quite, because Lexi played a 3 of a kind, drew 3 cards, no arrow, couldn't attack at all, had to pass the turn. I would love to see some sort of, offhand dagger or like hand crossbow thing that lets you use your weapon to either get an arrow, like 2 different arrow, which seems probably too powerful, or to do like a smaller attack, just something so that if you don't have an arrow, you're not helpless. I think that's one of the inherent weaknesses of the class. Maybe that's what they want. Maybe they want that to be an inherent weakness of the class. But I would do something to make the weakness less brutal when it happens.
What about some sort of offhand attack that you can pay to destroy to get an arrow out of your graveyard?
Ooh, see, that sounds really cool. Yeah, I was thinking. I'm a longtime player of ARPGs, so I love Diablo, and I played a lot of Diablo 3. I play it with my partner Robin every now and then, but they had dually crossbows. So I figured like some sort of like dually crossbow thing, or like a crossbow in one hand and then like a dagger in the other hand. Something like that could be cool. So the dagger, you can still come in with it. Or maybe
maybe like bow, right? Like a weaker bow, but with a secondary Kodachi style option.
Yeah, so like the weaker bow is like maybe it fires an arrow normally, but it's like -1 attack or something like that. So you have a downside, and then you can always come in with the dagger. That would be cool.
I like it. I like it. All right. What is the hit Phasmatis song that you'd play if now I called an audible on this one. What is the hit Phasmatis song that you would play if you had one encore and they called you up to play a Phasmatis song?
Oh my god, man. Oh no.
I'm telling you, I'd go on the fly with these, baby. This is an evolving. This script is an evolving script.
Yeah, this one is oh man.
Own it, buddy. Come on, own it.
I'm trying to think of the song. So we had God, some of them are really cheesy names, by the way, right? Keep in mind this was like high school metal band. So we had songs like that are just called like Darkness, right? Mm-hmm. But we also had like joke songs. So we had one called Mr. Johnson that was about our teacher because he flunked one of our bandmates because he gave him was it a 59.8 or something like that? Oh. And so he flunked him and made him retake the class. So we had a song called Mr. Johnson because he was pissed. He was pissed at that. Yeah. So one of those, probably that one, probably the joke song.
All right, so it's either Darkness or Mr. Johnson. All right.
Yeah.
I thought that would have been a song about your appendage.
No.
You're talking about joke songs. I was like, okay, that is.
We have some other joke songs, but the names may not be appropriate for radio talk.
All right, and you guys open for Bloodhound Gang. It sounds like that might be potentially appropriate too.
Or we can do like we did a lot of covers. It is interesting. So like for Phasmatis, we would do like a lot of like either punk or metal covers, and then just my friends in general outside of the band, we did a lot of like covers for like Weezer and that kind of stuff. So those are always fun to play. Especially if you want to do like up tempo versions of them. If you want to play them like really fast, like Weezer songs but played really fast, like Hash Pipe. Is a lot of fun.
Great song.
Played really fast. Oh, it's really good. Anyway, yeah.
All right. So Flesh and Blood in 5 years, if you're not on tour with Phasmatis, of course. What do you see? Where do you see the game in 5 years from now?
Yeah, so I definitely think the game is still going to be here in 5 years. I think that's one question a lot of people would ask, like, "Oh, would it even be here?" Yeah. I think it's going to be here. I think it's still going to be very strong. I think it'll, in the next year or so, and maybe it already has, like, situated itself as not just an alternative to the big three, but maybe kind of like weaseled up in there next to like Yu-Gi-Oh! And like the top 4 card games. I think that, organized play is still going to be a huge thing for Flesh and Blood. And I think it's only going to get more exciting and bigger going forward, especially going into 2022. And I think 2022 is going to lay the groundwork for that with the Pro Tour and Worlds. And so, in 5 years, we'll have like a couple Worlds under the belt, and it'll be like an even bigger and more exciting thing. I think that's where Flesh and Blood is going. I think it's we're gonna have a bunch of different sets in 5 years. And thinking about like the sets, what they want to do, I know, is they want to visit every single region of the world of Wraith. And currently, we've only visited 2 of them out of like 8 or 9. I want to say something like that. And so we've only visited two of them in like 2 years. So in 5 more years, maybe we'll visit 5 more, but that still leaves so many more things to explore and to like dive into, which is just still so awesome, man. Like so awesome for the longevity of the game that there's like that much of the world to explore and to get into, and new talents and new mechanics. And I think all of this stuff will be coming out, well into 5+ years. So I think Flesh and Blood has a very, very, very radiant future ahead of it.
Well, who better to guide us through it than Callan Rosenberger, a.k.a. Red Zone Rogue. You heard him here on the Instant Speed podcast. Thank you so much, my friend, for doing the show again. It was my pleasure and honor to work with you, to meet you in Orlando. I'm hoping that we can do that again sometime soon. And yeah, man, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for doing the show.
You are very, very welcome. It has been an absolute blast being on here. You can bet I will be at various Flesh and Blood events doing coverage and whatnot. So I think the chances that we work together again are pretty good, man.
I like the sound of that. Again, for those of you, for those out there, rather, with their head perhaps buried in the sand, how can they, watch your content, get a little bit more of your consumables?
It's just Red Zone Rogue everywhere. So like youtube.com/Red Zone Rogue, at Red Zone Rogue on Twitter, at Red Zone Rogue on Instagram or Facebook. Got to stay consistent with the branding. So it's just Red Zone Rogue everywhere.
Yeah, it must be nice, man. I'm watch Flake because some clown out there has been Flake for like God knows how many years, but hasn't produced anything for like 8 of them. So I'm in a constant battle with like all these different. I'm like, just give it to me. This person hasn't done anything for 8 years. Like, just give it to me, please.
I've had friends in similar situations. Twitter will eventually cave in, so hopefully they'll cave in for you.
I'm just going to continue to knock on their door forever and always. All right, friend. Thank you so much again for doing the show. And for you out there listening, it has been our pleasure. You're listening to the Instant Speed podcast brought to you by FABDB.net. Get all of your awesome deck building tools and resources at FABDB.net. Upgrade your account to premium. Promise you won't regret it. All right, be kind to one another, friends, and don't forget you're not losing if you're learning, so keep shuffling up with the cards and play. You might actually win. Catch you next week.